Strap in your brain cells, guys, because it's about to go down. By the way, I woke up yesterday and randomly decided to cut my fringe, and I'm feeling a bit self-conscious about it, so please be nice. So you guys might have been on Pinterest or ArtStation and seen these really cool interior cutaway environment designs. You know, the ones with like lots of intricate detail, you know, and lots of storytelling. And before I went to concept art school, I also looked at these designs and I was like, how did someone consolidate all this cool set dressing into one page? It completely blew my mind. And so after going to concept art school and doing a bunch of these interior cutaways myself, I realized that there is kind of like a formula slash, not really a formula, but more of like a checklist of important values that you can include in your brainstorming mind mapping period to have more of an entertaining design, pretty much. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my personal brainstorming process through a personal project that I'm working on for an interior cutaway. So first of all, you want to get comfortable. You want to start with a fresh page in Photoshop, or you can do this on paper traditionally if you like. I really like to put a textured background on my page and use red pen instead of black. It just kind of alleviates the pressure of, you know, doing perfect things. Right now we're just coming up with ideas, we're kind of word vomiting out here. So a lot of this will help you to, you know, de-emphasize the blankness of the page. So first you want to slap your main subject in the middle. You know, this can be just like a medieval tavern or a mafia hideout. So anything that will express the function of your environment. So for me, for my personal project, I'm going to be working on the old mask maker's workshop. So yeah, it's going to be this old guy's crafting workshop pretty much. So the first main value that we're going to add onto our mind mapping page is time period. And this is really, really crucial in narrowing down your context. I don't know if you guys have heard of DICE before, design in constrained environment. And at this early ideation phase, especially when you're starting on a personal project, or if the client's brief is a bit vague or open, it might be difficult for you to come up with a strong direction because of the paradox of choice. You know, if everything in the world is out there in the open, you know, you have no rule set for yourself, you're going to be dipping your toes in all sorts of different ideas and then probably just bashing all kinds of random shit together that probably shouldn't go together. And so in order to help ourselves through this, we need to set up some design parameters for our world building. So if you're working in a fictional time period like I am, so here it's in a fantasy realm, I'm still going to be basing it off an existing time period in the real world. I'm basing it off the early Middle Ages in Eurasia. So I'm going to be looking at Mongolian culture, Tibetan culture, Northern China, Silk Road, like all that jazz. Try to get quite specific with your time period. So especially if you're working in a relatively modern era. For example, if you're looking at 500 AD to 600 AD Europe, Middle Ages, like those two time periods will have the aesthetic between them will be quite similar. Whereas if you're comparing 1920s Art Deco to like 1950s post-war era, like the visual aesthetic between those two time periods will be quite drastic. So yeah, keep that in mind. The further and more modern you go in the timeline, basically the more specific you'll have to be. So I will be also adding some keywords, so maybe ancient civilization, what kind of architecture I'll be looking at that's based in that time period. And sometimes I'll just put in some random keywords and quotes from things that inspired me. So for this piece, I've been reading this book by Hayao Miyazaki called Shuna's Journey. And one of the first pages is a really nice line that I feel like will sum up the atmosphere of what I'm trying to create. So at the bottom of an ancient valley carved out by a glacier, there was a small kingdom which time had abandoned. So it has that very like otherworldly, you know, time has abandoned this place. Super mystical, that kind of vibe. Yeah, so you can just kind of put whatever you think will help you navigate through the time period at the stage. So the second value that I'm going to put on my mind map is occupation. And you can kind of interpret this as the purpose or the function of your space. For the interior that I'm working on, I'm doing a mask maker's workshop, right? So although this is going to be his house, like I'm going to put a bedroom, a bathroom, kitchen, everything, but the main purpose is still the crafting workshop space. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to gear most of my research into. And because I'm looking at more of a like an Asian influence fantasy world, I still want it to be kind of culturally ambiguous. So I'm looking at more of the visuals from Tibetan culture, Tibetan cultural masks, but the materials and crafting using techniques of traditional no theater Japanese wood carving. So those are the two things I'm gonna put on my mind map, kind of just like jumpstart points of how I'm gonna do my research. And I'll expand on this later, but this brainstorming will help you compartmentalize and distill your thoughts so that you're not just on Google Images for like 10 hours and you're just meandering through 1,000 images, you know what I'm saying? So the third thing that we're going to put down as an important value is culture. And having your concept art being based on a real life existing culture will give it that kind of groundedness and recognizability to your audience and make your work easier to relate to. So keep in mind with entertainment design, we're making things for the mass audience. So if your stuff is so out there and unrecognizable, then your audience will have a hard time relating to it and connecting to the IP. You know, even with a sci-fi or like far future setting, Dune is a really good example of this. Even though it is sci-fi, it is actually heavily influenced by like Middle Eastern and Islamic culture, and you can see it. And that also gives them a richer and deeper visual library to pull from, and also helps in conveying the idea of something being both ancient and futuristic at the same time, which is like a really cool dichotomy that is unique to the Dune universe. So for my mind map, I'm going to be adding some things that will help define my culture. So I'll put in religion and beliefs, maybe some visual motifs from the Tibetan Mongolian culture. I'm going to be exploring the magic system. So the narrative of this is based on an indie game I'm working on with my friend. My friend has already written out an entire narrative for the magic system. So I'm going to be kind of exploring that a little bit deeper. And then also, you know, everyday life of the people in that village. How might that reflect some of the ancient lifestyles of people in Asia? So, you know, drinking tea in the morning is a very traditional thing. Having some religious rituals, living close to nature. So these are all the keywords that relate to the culture. So the last value that I like to add is character. And I know a lot of people think of character design and environment design as two separate things, but actually like environment design is kind of like character design. The environment is a character within itself. The environment should be conveying the personalities and behaviors of its inhabitants, right? And that's what I really love about environment design actually. There's a lot of like subtle hints of, you know, the people who live there. So for my one, the guy living in this workshop is this village sage. He's a wise old man, village elder. I might do some research of what I think his appearance might be like, what his personality would be, because all of these little things that relate to his personality will manifest as set dressing in the space. So if he's a really disorganized person, I think somewhere in the backstory it said that his daughter passed away, and you know, that's why he's so obsessed with his craft, because he just wants to use it to like overcome the grief, or maybe it's like escapism. So in the set dressing, I might have like a picture of his daughter. I might have evidence to show that he's kind of a recluse and all this stuff is piled up, and unwashed dishes and like unwashed clothes, all these things. It's all about, you know, understanding the brief and then finding evidence in the assets and set dressing that you have to convey the storytelling. So by putting all of these initial values that we have onto paper and finding all these keywords, we should be able to answer the who, what, when, where, why of this piece. And if you like, you can write all of those down. But this should pretty much cover all bases. And next up, all we have to do is do a little bit of preliminary research to fill in any other gap of knowledge that we might not have. So if it's a subject matter that you have a lot of knowledge in, maybe you don't have to spend that much time doing research. But for me, I don't have too much knowledge on this subject. So I still try and keep my research under like 2 to 3 hours so I don't spend too much time. Yeah, I don't want to go on like this endless research venture, but here you can see that I have branched off from the main key points that we had. So for time period, I looked a bit into the obviously the different countries that I'm looking at, maybe the technology, what will the technology be like? Is it still very analog and primitive? There'd still be carpentry, blacksmithing. In this world, they don't have electricity. They use this thing called a sun shard as energy. So that would play a huge role into how certain appliances are designed. You know, I want that really otherworldly feeling. How do we emphasize that? Maybe emphasizing the scale of the world. How do we relate small set dressing elements in the interior space to convey a larger story of how the outside world building is? you know, looking at the architecture, what the climate is like in the region. Here it's like a mountainous region. No, sorry, not mountainous, but it's a very cold region. Maybe it's very, very cold. And so the materials that they use for construction would have to reflect that. So what kind of natural materials would they use? Stone, wood, yeah, all that stuff. For occupation, I looked into the whole work process of how these wooden masks are made. So from chopping down the trees to chiseling and filing all the little wood pieces to, you know, putting in all the details and painting it, putting lacquer on at the end, decorating it. So this whole work process, I probably watched like a few YouTube documentaries when I wrote this. Yeah, to kind of have a clear workflow so I can show that in the space as well. It's more believable. And then with the culture, I looked into, you know, maybe even the diet, like what kind of things would they eat? Would they have livestock and stuff outside? Magic system, so they might have runes and scrolls and tapestries in the set dressing. For the character, I delved a bit deeper into what his appearance would be like. So the clothes he has in his wardrobe would also have to show a bit about the character, right? And if he likes to smoke his pipe, maybe there's like a pipe there, an ashtray, things like that. So yeah, so just going in, fleshing out each point, and all of this will help you visually when you need to, you know, do some design problem solving after this mind mapping stage. So after the mind map is done, I'm gonna be creating some lists of things I'll need for specific assets in the room to gather the parts I need for my interior cutaway scene. So firstly, I have to define the main areas and find a focal point. So we all know that focal points are really important in art. It's what your eyes are first drawn to when you look at the artwork, right? And so it's the same thing with concept art, but in an interior cutaway, usually the focal point is, you know, is an area that has like a cool silhouette or something that expresses and shows the function of the space the clearest. So for the space here, I'm going to be looking at the different main areas. So here I have the workshop, his sleeping area, the cooking, dining area, and maybe an external wood chopping area. I know the workshop is going to be my main focal point, my primary focal point. Then the secondary focal point will probably be his sleeping area with all his personal belongings. Maybe there's a bit more personality in that space. And then the third would probably be the kitchen space. So look at the different areas that you might have in your space and define them by their specific function. Next up, we're going to IKEA. Yeah, so at this stage, I'll be listing down the basic furniture / essentials that I need in the space. And by basic, I mean what a human needs to function, pretty much. This is really important in making your space believable because a human needs to look like they can exist in it. I remember back when I was in architecture school, we had a crit session once, and one of my classmates brought in his residential house and it had no windows in the design. And our professor literally went apeshit. He was like roasting him in front of the entire class. He was like, are we designing a Russian gulag? Are we designing a prison? Why does this place have no windows? And he was just going ham at this guy. And I felt so bad because he probably like traumatized him for life. But it also was it stuck with me until now. Like, it's so important to make a place habitable for a human. Obviously, if you're designing a prison, then don't put in windows. But you know, other than that, usually in a residential place, you need windows, you need ventilation, you need sunlight, and that makes sense. Essentials like that also cover, you know, temperature control. Does your room have a fireplace? Does it have modern AC? You know, does it have a fridge? Do you have power supply? You know, are there power plugs? Even small things like that. Yeah, what kind of energy are they using? Is it steampunk? Is it, you know, is it coal? I don't know, is it like a magical source of energy? All of that has to be factored in. And also, one of the main things also lighting. So are there any lighting fixtures? Are you using candles? You know, filament lighting, like a wall lamp, stuff like that. So yeah, essentials. So after furniture, we have set dressing. And this is where all the fun, cool little storytelling details come in. This is when you can have a lot of fun doing your research. These are more, story specific items specific to the situation and the lifestyle of the inhabitants of the space. And yeah, you can just have a lot of fun with this. Here I have, you know, a lot of the equipment that he might use for his wood carving stuff. Some ritual, religious kind of equipment as well. His pipe, his flute, some scrolls, even going down to like the cutlery, what kind of food they might eat. So all of this stuff is like the loose, more personal set dressing elements that you'll have. One of the other things you might want to think about is sound and smell. So this really adds to the realism and gives people like sound designers or animators ideas when they look at your concept art. You really want to be looking for that 360 sensory engagement, right? So for mine, I'm thinking if you walk into this space, it smells like chopped wood, it smells very musky, maybe there's a heavy tobacco smell, maybe there's a stew brewing in the corner, it's bubbling on the fireplace. Maybe I'll add some wind chimes near the windowsill so that it has a little bit of like passive, moving animation. Maybe he has a pet, maybe it's like a cat-like, a fantasy cat-like creature. I'm thinking of like the Loth cat from Ahsoka from Star Wars, like something similar like that. Yeah, and that could have another sound and animation effect. I don't know, maybe there's like a screaming dying goat outside and then you can draw that in. The possibilities are endless, so just have fun with this and think about how you can create this whole world through all your different senses and how that will impact the story of your interior cutaway as well. So lastly and most importantly, we have entertainment value. And after all, our goal in entertainment design is to elicit some sort of emotional response from the viewer, right? This could be horror, comedy, drama, action, anything. And it doesn't have to be, this huge thing. You just have to find one moment. If you're playing a movie, you hit pause. What is that one moment in the scene that tells a story? It could be, before an incident, during an incident, or after an incident. So maybe it could be like an aftermath of a really bloody conquest, and then the fortress walls are like crumbling, and then there's people dying and there's blood everywhere. That tells a story. Or it could be something very simple, like this kid's bedroom and he's like rushing to go to school and all his homework's on the floor and his dog is chewing his homework. Like something as simple and humble as that is also a kind of story. So there's like a spectrum of this and you can just choose whatever moment that you want to convey. But adding a moment can really heighten the intrigue and action in your scene. So for mine, this is based off like the story that has been written. The main character has visited this village elder's house before she has to venture on a really long journey. And he's like sitting beside her on the at the fireplace, maybe they're sharing a cup of tea. He's talking about a lot of folk stories and fables of what he's heard about like outside of the village, and showing her like ancient scrolls and stuff like that. So it's kind of like him trying to be hospitable for once after like ages of just living by himself. That's the specific moment that I'm trying to convey in my interior cutaway. And that's it, guys. So after doing all of this mind mapping and initial research, you should pretty much have a kind of shopping list of things to look for when you're finding your image references. And this will really help support your thumbnailing and design sketching process as well. So here's a summary of all the stuff we talked about today. So first, it's understanding your brief and the function of your environment, so your main subject. Second, we'll talk about time period, occupation, culture, and character. And at the end, that all culminated into a who, what, when, where, why. You can also write all of those down individually if you like. Then we looked at the focal points, so our main areas of function. Then furniture basics and essentials. Next, we moved on to our set dressing, and then sound, smells, animation. And then at the end, and most importantly, entertainment value and story. So this is just my way of doing things, my process that I've learned from concept art school, from design school, just doing research on my own, taking classes. Some people might think I do too much writing and research. Some people can just look at a few references and start designing. But I feel like doing more of this, maybe I'll have to I can do less of this the more I do this, because the more you understand a subject matter and the bigger your visual library will grow, right? So maybe in a few years time, I won't have to do too much of this when I revisit the same subject matter. In concept art, you're always going to be, faced with new topics, new things that you've never even seen or you never even put too much attention to. So I think it's always good. I mean, you're just learning more anyway, so it's just fun research to do. Yeah, but just don't let it drag out for too long, because sometimes if you're on a deadline, maybe I would allocate 2 to 3 hours to doing all of this. But yeah, I hope this helped you guys in some way. Hope you enjoyed it. I've been getting a lot of comments and messages from you guys to share my work process, so I'm going to be documenting this whole journey of me doing my personal project for this indie game. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps me out in knowing if this is the type of content that you guys would like. If you guys want to see anything else, please let me know in the comments, and feel free to join our Discord group as well. I'll share the link in the description. If you guys plan to do an interior cutaway yourselves, you can post your work there. We always share our art and give each other feedback. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. Thanks for watching to the end. Yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.